I heartily welcome the panelists, Mr. D.D. Mishra, former Director HR ONGC. Welcome, sir.
Namaskar.
Mr. V.M. Chamola, former Director HR, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Namaskar, Chamola, sir. And Mr. Saptarishi Roy, former Director HR, NTPC. Namaskar, Saptarishi ji. I welcome National President, Dr. Nataraj Ray, past presidents, OB members, NC members, ISTD members, and all other attendees who have joined today's program from various organizations like NTPC, HAL, and ONGC. I am joined by my colleagues Hemlata, Mamta, Meenakshi, and Gurvinder from ISTD headquarters. Today's theme, HR during COVID and post-COVID times, challenges and prospects, is a very relevant and apt theme today. Socio-economic scenario, what today is undergoing a major change in the way we have been working in organizations since ages. Social distancing, work from home, flexi timings have become new normal. Every organization is facing different economical and operating challenges. HR is to become a key driver in formulating the short-term as well as the long-term policies of the organizations. COVID-19 has necessitated long overdue transformation. We will be talking about the challenges that HR faces today and the opportunities that are being created during this period, and of course the prospects of HR in the post-COVID times. In this program, I will now invite our National President, Dr. Nataraj Ray, to formally welcome you all and give his welcome address. Dr. Nataraj Ray.
Yeah. Good evening, Joshi ji, and my team from the national office, and I welcome Mr. D.D. Mishra, the former director ONGC, Mr. V.M. Chamola, former director of HAL, and also Mr. Saptarishi Roy, former director of NTPC. Sir, on behalf of ISTD National Office and my personal capacity as a national president, I welcome all of you in this today's session. We ISTDian, after lockdown, we feel that what we'll do, how to connect our every members and our members, that the past president, national council member, OB members. Then we have decided to do the knowledge sharing session to all our members, and also to the who are not even our members, to a platform where many of the senior bureaucrats, some of the thought leaders, HR leaders are sharing their knowledge, how to work and how to sustain and how to maintain our livelihood after or post-COVID in the country. We know that GDP and others gone down. We know that migrant labor has a very big issue. We know that at least 12 crore unemployment is generated last 3 months. So instead of that, we Indian, on behalf of ISTD, that the training development organization, how can help them, how can sustain them this critical situation. We have a very resource person today, and this strong leader has given us enlightened us what will be our duty, or what will the HR. In fact, I am also HR. I am working as an HR domain in one of the multinational company in country head. So I know we have a manufacturing unit across the globe. In West Bengal, we have a manufacturing unit. I know what is the current scenario where our industry, when I am working, 89% utilization of factory, now it is coming to 36-37% utilization. Due to government policy, 37% to 40% employee work done. There's a lot of stress and strain is going on because the COVID has given a uncertainty and volatile things in the country. So the thought leader like Mr. Saab, like Chamola Saab and Rai Saab, you give us, enlighten us how to manage or sustain during the COVID and post-COVID themes, challenge and prospects. Challenge, yes, every day we are challenged because lot of people are working, lot of contractual people are working in my organization. How to make them salary, because there's a piece rate, there's a tonnage and many verticals is there. So this is the challenge we are facing now. Migrant labor we are facing now. Many unemployment we are facing now. So COVID and post-COVID, how to make all these challenges? What is the HR role? Because HR is the one of the main vertical who can give the main input to the organization, who can give the light to the organization, how to maintain this organization after or post-COVID. Thank you, sir. You are coming, and thank you very much for giving your thought to my members, to who are not our members. They have also learned how to do the thing. And I would also grateful to my office team. My team is there, Mrs. Emma, Mrs. Minakshi, and Mrs. Mamta, for the first time they're coming to this session. Thank you very much for your enthusiastic activities. And I would thank Director Ji, Joshi Ji, for your arranging this organization. And few more webinar will go in future. Thank you very much. And I welcome formally all of the speakers, participants, my past president, my OB members, my NC Council members, my general members who have attended to this wonderful session, to this excellent session will be delivered my senior colleagues who is in PSU, retired from PSU as a director. We learned from them how to run and how to sustain post-COVID. Thank you, sir. We welcome all of them. And today, today's session will be a very wonderful and exciting session, and we will enjoy this. I'll be continue. Will be the session. I'll be listening from your for all of your direction to the industry. Thank you very much. Welcome all of them to this program, to this session. On behalf of ISTD, I'm grateful all of you, and we will work together in future also, all of you, sir. And PSU is our heart. ISTD is a training development. We work together in future more and more to this PSU. Thank you very much. Welcome all. This session, a wonderful session, will be enjoy, and all the participants will be enjoy today's program. Over to Joshi.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President. Now, before we commence today's program, let me share with you the broad framework of the webinar. Initially, comments of the panelists on today's theme are invited, and the time frame will be around 10 minutes for each of the panelists, and thereafter we will have a panel discussion of 20-25 minutes among the panelists. So they will be sharing their views and they will be discussing how to go about it. And finally, there will be a question answer session, because a lot of questions will be coming up. I'll be taking up the questions on behalf of the attendees, and that's how we go about it. And now let me invite Hema, who will be introducing Mishra Saab to this program. Hema, please introduce.
Yes. Namaskar. So it's my honor to introduce Mr. D.D. Mishra, former Director of Human Resource ONGC, India's leading Maharatna Exploration and Production Company of India. Sir served as a member of board of ONGC as Director HR from 2014 to 2018. He has chaired Asian Pacific Resource Center of United Nations Global Compact Network India. He has been on the governing board of SCOPE. During his career and post-superannuation, he has been regularly sharing his motivational thoughts on various national forums. He is a passionate wildlife photographer and has been regularly contributing to many nature magazines. He is presently working on a book profiling the Rajaji Tiger Reserve of Uttarakhand. As cinematographer, he has his maiden film, Stars in Ranthambore, to his credit, and he's working on his second film on endangered golden langurs at Chakrashila Wildlife Sanctuary. Sir, I would like to congratulate you for your maiden film and all the best wishes for your upcoming one. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Mishra sir, please.
So thank you, Dr. Nataraj Ray, the National President ISTD, Director ISTD, Dr. Joshi, and my co-panelists. And I would really thank ISTD for giving us opportunity to share our thoughts. That's not Dr. Joshi was saying, that retired employees and superannuated employees don't get chance to come to webinars to address. So once more again, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir.
So I would, to begin with at the outset, I would like to play devil's advocate in bringing out the issues confronting the HR fraternity vis-a-vis the aspirations of corporate world. I would say the expectations of the workforce in India from us, and whether we have been able to rise to the occasion. So as far as Team HR is concerned, what should be our role in the organization? What is the expectation of people from us? And let us say for the time being, put HR fraternity as an ordinary employee, in the shoes of an ordinary employee, and see what an ordinary employee expects from the organization. And if we try to understand, putting ourselves into their shoes, we will understand that this is what the role of Team HR is, and especially in a very troubled COVID times. And here lies the answer. So therefore, I think we as a Team HR, we should be able to rise up to the expectations of ordinary employee with pleasure and with a smile. And that's what I think is the theme of today. And if you are able to rise up to the aspirations of people, I think the corporate world, which expects us to do more and more, and the workforce, which expects us to do, I think that the aspirations will be fulfilled. If you see Indian job market, it is basically an elimination round. When a person goes to the market, there is already a screening is there. And finally, when a HR officer is selected and he joins the corporate world, his IQ level is already tested. He is above average. Actually, we do not expect that a person with a very high IQ joins HR fraternity. Above averages, I think, is good enough. But what is more important is the competency what Team HR needs today and all the time is the sense of service, the compassion, the empathy, the call beyond duty. Now, these are the competencies I think if we as Team HR can work on and try to acquire and more, I think we are doing a job well. So therefore, if we try to put it a little more organized way, we can say a person with high EQ, emotional quotient, and high AQ, that adversity quotient, could be a good HR manager, especially in these COVID times. And I would also say that these COVID times are a golden opportunity for HR fraternity to rise up to the expectations of people, to rise up to the expectations of the various boards, various companies, and perform and show that, look, we have taken the challenge, we have taken the gauntlet, and we are here to serve people. And let me tell you, my assessment is, and I'm sure that all of you, my co-panelists and all feel the same way, that COVID is not going anywhere. It has already impacted our lives so much. And it is going to stay. It has affected our lifestyle. It has affected the way we work in office. and the way we live in our families. So it is going to stay, and we need to really organize ourselves accordingly. So at this stage, I would like to conclude here, and as we go along, I think we will talk more.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for sharing. Now, invite Mamta to introduce Shri V.M. Chamola.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, all. Mr. Chamola, V.V. Chamola, he is ex-HR Director, HAL Bengaluru. He has served NTPC and Nathapa Jhakri Power Corporation Limited, NJPC, which is now Satluj Jal Vidyut Nigam, in various capacities before joining HAL. He possesses rich and diverse experience in HR and has contributed towards streamlining the HR systems with a view to provide a healthy work environment. Shri Chamola was conferred the Chanakya Award for Business Excellence in HR by Public Relations Council of India. He was chairman of NAEL, wholly owned subsidiary of HAL at Prayagraj from 2017 to 2019. His prolific artifact collector and curator and has magnificent collection of arts and sculptures all over the country. Thank you, sir.
Welcome, Shri Chamola.
Thank you, Mamta. I start with a thank you to Avinash particularly, who made me to join this enlightened panel and the forum provided by ISTD. I would, Mishra ji has brought out basically what are the expectations. I'll also dwell upon what your President, Mr. Natarajan had said earlier. I hope the discussion will be exciting, and at least it will add some value from the point of view as to what HR can do. I basically feel and have always, particularly I was on the board of HL for almost 8.5 years, with the responsibility of managing director also of accessories complex, particularly 3 divisions, and then running a company as the chairman. So I have some experience on mostly my 4 years HR, but at the same time I have dwelt on the and on the technical side also. I basically draw upon one very important aspect. HR, like any other function, be it you take finance, you take marketing, you take production, or any other function, it's basically draws its whatever domain of HR, it draws from the business only. So first of all, there is a greater understanding now. There is no denying the fact that there is going to be a pre-corona and post-corona. In between, there will be definitely, there is no doubt about it that operational or tactical aspects will have to be looked into by various organizations depending upon their own peculiarities or specific nature of the jobs they are doing. But at the same time, I can definitely say with certitude that this corona has definitely impacted the organizations, particularly the business, in a manner which no other particular event had impacted. And accordingly, if we, before dwelling upon as to how HR should handle, I personally feel that there is a very clear panoramic view of how it has impacted the business, and then drawing upon as to how it has impacted the various functions, particularly HR, how HR has to handle it. I'll dwell upon that also. Basically, if you see, there are 2 things which are very important before I start enlisting as to what are the areas, key areas which have been impacted irrevocably. There are 2 things which are very important. Is the new normal has to be established, keeping in view the corona event, or the paradigm has to be shifted. There has to be a new normal has to be established. For that, what is required is HR has to be, HR and the business first of all has to be proactive. HR accordingly coextensively has to be proactive. The decisions are required to be taken in a very quick manner. You can't now, time of basically in leadership means what? Decisions have to be taken, informed decisions. But now that there's a greater need to take decisions very quickly in a very, very proactive manner. I just quickly recapitulate as to what are the various businesses which have impacted very, very badly. And I don't think they can come back to the same level or even not even 50% of what they were earlier. Example, if you see, say that today if you see your retail retail has gone haywire. Even online shopping, which was picking up, has also been impacted very, very strongly. The logistics, quite an extent, the we used to always talk about supply chain. You see how it has impacted. As Mr. Ray was rightly bringing out that almost from 80% to 37% has come down. It has impacted in a very, very strong manner. Your transport has impacted, your real estate has impacted, very, very strongly. Oil and gas has been impacted, the construction industry. Anyway, I'll now bringing to the main aspects as to what are the perceptible changes and how do we cope with that from the HR perspective. As brought out by Mishra ji also and Avinash also earlier, the job market has been impacted very, very strongly. So how this job market has to be, you can't be now what was happening earlier based on the government directives. Government directives are own requirement, both blending together. We were employing, recruiting people, workmen or officers and all. In fact, I would like to somewhere bring it out here that irrespective whether Corona was nowhere inside that point in time, way back we thought that if organizations have to sustain, they have to be competitive. HR has to play a very important role. And in 2015, 14 end, we took a call that we will not engage regular employees. And in 2015 onwards, HL, we took a very strong call and no regular employee has been engaged there. The facilities we have seen in terms of statute, in terms of various acts and all, they are being paid, the statute reduced. And today, if you see, even during the indefinite strike, which went on for 9 days, we were able to sustain essentially because we had taken those, we had engaged people on a contractual basis, on tenure basis, we used to call it. Now there is a greater need. There is a greater need to understand business and at the same time to ensure that we don't take regular employees except in a very, very critical areas. There has to be flexi timings. There has to be rationalization of manpower. Now, second thing important is revenue has taken a very strong hit. So payroll, which is normally in public sector and private sector, so private sector mostly and in few public sectors also, this has to be now payroll means revenue has to be somewhere. Air India example comes to my mind very, very immediately. That what they did was almost 60%. They said that 60% can be laid temporarily. They can be told to requested to stay at home and all. This is one good example. There can be a number of examples. Sabbaticals can be given, or somewhere maybe they can be requested depending upon the requirement of the organization to take certain courses on a long-term basis, which can be partly financed or partly facilities can be given that like what you call whatever normal facilities we extend in HR, those can be given. Other things which I feel work culture has to undergo a change. Very strong change work culture has to undergo. What are the things which are required? Say example, NTPC, as we all know, that they started work from home only. Certain areas, of course, there has to be certain what you call clear parameters as to how when they log in, what are the values they have to, what are the things they are required to undertake. So important need is of the hour is that flexi timings, your work culture has to undergo a change. That is basically from, I think most of the executives, those who can from say IMM side, material side, or who can work from home can be given that option. One more aspect which is very important I feel is, which has now today, HR is also equally responsible for that. Business first and then consciousness about what is right, what is wrong. Earlier we were doing basically all the business was driven by consumerism or meeting the targets, irrespective of the basic values behind it. So I would not like as to what are required to be done, that I'll take it later on. But at the same time, I feel that these are the basic issues which HR also, in addition to leaders in the organization, HR also has to take a clear call. I'll dwell upon that as to what can be done very, very, very precisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. Now I invite Meenakshi to introduce Saptarishi Roy, ex-Director HR NTPC.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to introduce Mr. Saptarishi Roy, former Director, Human Resource, NTPC. Mr. Roy is graduate in electrical engineering, having 39 years of experience in the power sector. And he also had additional responsibilities in joint venture subsidiaries of NTPC. He has served as Executive Director to and CMD NTPC, Corporate Planning and Communications, and has to his credit ATD Best Award for consecutively 4 years from 2017 to 2020, and CA National Award for Significant Achievement in HR Excellence in 2020. And he has been board member in UP Rajya Vidyut Utpadan Nigam. He was a president Power HR Forum from 2019 to 20. Thank you, sir.
Welcome, sir. Saptarishi ji.
Yeah.
Hi, sir.
Uh,
Welcome.
At the outset, let me take this opportunity to provide me this, brilliant and outstanding opportunity to interact with not only with some of my older friends, but also meeting some of the new friends. So, Mr. Nataraj Rai, Mr. Joshi ji, my co-panelists, Mr. Mishra ji, Mr. Chamola ji, the supporting associates from National Headquarters of ISTD, and my fellow participant in this webinar. A very good afternoon to all of you. I think much has been said about the kind of impact which this current pandemic has created in the world of work. Started with Mr. Mishra ji and subsequently further elaborated by Chamola ji. And we have seen that this pandemic has been radically disrupting the entire work environment to the extent as never before. This has never been, we have never seen this kind of thing. And during this period of crisis, the topmost priority in most of the organizations has been crisis response and emphasizing health, safety, and well-being of the people, employees and their family members, and ensuring, availability of the essential services. And on the home front, we have seen proliferation of virtualization of the work and education. These are some of the, prominent, significant themes which emerges during this, crisis response to this pandemic, which has come all of a sudden without any prior kind of notice. And one thing which is a common denominator in whatever that I have said in dealing with this response is the kind of, the HR function, because HR function is omnipresent in dealing with all these responses, be it designing the work space with adequate social distancing, sanitization, compliance of hygienic behavior like frequent hand washing or wearing of masks and providing personal protective equipments, enabling the critical mass of employees required to attend emergency functions in the organizations to sustain business operations, or monitor health and safety of the employees and their families, extending support to employees in distress, and many more such things. I think the task cut out during this pandemic for HR function is enormous. And I think I only listed some of the list, but this is only illustrative, but not very exhaustive. And it is expected from HR function that some of the organizations, including one where I last worked, they have handled this responsibility exceedingly well. So much so that there were not a single occasion of disruption of the services delivered by the organization. I must give credit to all those working behind the scene in the organizations during these hours of crisis, rendering their relentless services so that the life of the people who are confined in the homes are comfortable by providing uninterrupted supply of electricity. So it's a huge Herculean task, and my salute to all those power warriors, as we often refer to this set of people. Now, one of the most profound changes that also we have witnessed in this COVID-19 crisis has been this social contract has been changed, particularly between employer and the employee. The social contract is generally implicit based on the accepted assumptions about the way things are, and often unspoken. We don't write it down or speak about it. And one of the most significant upheavals in the social contract is dissolution of accepted boundaries between work life and the home life. as millions of co-workers are, actually video conferencing into each other's home offices, sometimes even kitchens. So there is a great deal of invasion of the privacy, which we have come across while people have been trying to cope up with their work from home. Another very serious dark side, and which Mr. Nataraj Ray did mention about in his opening remarks, that that we have been exposed to by this pandemic, is the vulnerability of the gig workers or the temporary workers or migrant workers, whichever name we may call them, who make up a large portion of the entire workforce. In our system, they normally provide the last mile delivery of the business outcomes, mostly outsourced, and often the obligations of business is only limited to the compliance of statutory requirement under labor laws, like minimum wages, compliance of Provident Fund, ESI, and things like that. They are the most affected segment of the workforce in this crisis period. But it has proved one major assumptions wrong about their relevance and dependability. And we have seen that despite having all other resources with the organization, the industry could not function in their absence. So it is the dependence of the industries on this set of workforce and the work performed by the so-called insignificant and often ignored factors of production. And this raises one of the most fundamental questions in the world of work about how they are going to be treated in an organization. Is mere compliance of statutory provisions? Is there an? I think this is something which need to be very seriously brainstormed, and there is an urgent need to do more than what is required and expected, under the compliance of various provisions of the certain statutes. I think for sustenance of the business, it is high time that the organizations must seek answer to this question, going beyond the boundaries of their traditional responsibility of confining within those compliances of the statutory obligations. Because it has been proved that their contributions goes much beyond what has been traditionally assumed. So therefore, this casts a major agenda for HR for consideration by the business leaders. Now, this has been the flip side of the pandemic, which we have just spoken about. And I think there are many more such gloomy side. But amongst this gloomy scenario, there is still a silver lining. And I think we are witnessing that this society is changing in some positive ways also. And let me give you some flavor of my observations towards this assertions. One, the vulnerability we all feel to this virus has opened up our hearts. Care, empathy, forgiveness, patience, listening are among some of the most important new topics which has entered into this business world. There is a growing understanding and awareness amongst the business leaders that if the business and employees don't feel safe, the company cannot perform. So emotional well-being of the workforce has assumed a greater importance and much more visibility and priority in this COVID period. The expectations for safety of physical, emotional, financial, and digital have profoundly increased across all stakeholders. This is one of the major observations, and we have seen that how we have gone beyond our call of duty to support our people who are in need of that, even though they may not be present at the workforce, but somehow or other we have supported them to support their livelihood in these hours of crisis. The another observations which comes to my mind is traditionally we had strong biases against working from home. Now that has disappeared, as there are innumerable instances of increased productivity by people working remotely from home, despite the years of assumptions to the contrary. So that is one of the, another point which has been, come up very, very eloquently. Third, as an organization resort to financial prudence and budget cut in their spending, it is an opportunity for HR to simplify the complicated processes and reduce bureaucracy within the company so that they can perform more efficiently. Another major area which got a big kind of boost is the area of learning and development, and it has taken center stage for the HR. The pandemic is actually has forced the business transformation process in most of the organizations, and HR must leverage this opportunity, because we must not miss this opportunity as a HR fraternity to really bank on and the learning and development as a plank and a platform to build capability of the organizations, which is required for the future growth. The opportunity for HR also lies as companies are willing to invest, in HR technology. Particularly, generally, it has been seen that during the times of recession, some of the major knee-jerk reactions in terms of budget cut is towards the new spending in technology and things like that. But contrary to those, practices, I think this pandemic has seen that there is an increased investment in technology, particularly in HR domain, so that people can work from home and a lot of activities can be carried out, in a remote manner by using digital technology as a platform. The HR profession has taken a very important role during this pandemic, partnering with medical and the IT functions to figure out as to how to respond and recover, and even I would say re-engineer the workforce and the workplace challenges. I think this is every organization is trying to work out on this particular aspects. And my belief is, for many years, we the HR professionals have been talking about HR to be taken as a business partner. But now the opportunity has come. HR professionals are leading the change in most of the organizations, and thanks to pandemic for making it happen. We have not perhaps reached the worst of the pandemic so far, but I think situation is yet to be worst before it becomes better. And it is also an opportunity to be close to each other during this moment of crisis and relate to each other in an absolutely new way. So these are some of my initial thoughts which I shared with you. I'll be free to take any questions if they are posed on these issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I will request all the attendees to please post their questions in the Q&A box. So still there are only 2 questions in the Q&A box. Even though some questions are there in the chat box, but I will request you, all of you, to please post your questions. And now I throw it open. Vinay.
I'll just add a few things what Mr. Roy had said.
Okay, please.
I just very briefly, I'll add a few points which came to my mind. One is, as I said earlier, operational level, there is no doubt about it that if we take, say, PSUs, I really can't say much about the private sector, but PSUs from operational point of view, keeping in view all the difficulties faced during this COVID, maybe is it social distancing or whatever challenge they were faced, I'm sure they were able to, operationally, they were able to tide over this, took it as a challenge, and I think moved away with that. I would like to dwell upon more on the strategic aspect, which basically will have a very long-term bearing. As we said earlier, there's no doubt that a lot of digital platforms are being used in a much larger way than it used to be earlier. ISTD, as you brought out earlier, is also a very live example. On the production front, where also HR has to or has been playing. In fact, I can say, definitely clearly say that I was playing being a direct HR, I was playing an important role in the production side also. I can definitely tell you that it is not only what you call on the HR front, but it has to be on a much larger framework. Like on, say, example, on now, two aspects which come to mind very, very clearly is, first of all, in addition to what we are doing, machine learning, IoT, artificial intelligence, all these things are required to be brought in as embedded into the systems, so that your capability efficiency will be much higher. Second thing, I think we need to differentiate between, say, gig economy. Gig economy is today, or a shared or collaborating, like Airbnb is there today. You'll be surprised that if you see, we were trying to procure certain equipments in some of the hospitals. You will be surprised that most of the bigger hospitals, whose turnover today also is into, say, millions and all, they don't purchase machines. They are only hiring those machines, and maintenance is all at their cost. So here, even not only revenue, but on the capital side also, you need to have a gig or a shared or collaborative model. The old model of purchasing machines, definitely I can tell you, has caused havoc in the PSUs. We have taken machines, we have taken made huge capital investment, and have not utilized it properly. It must be true of most of the PSUs. Now, second aspect is, insofar as contract labor is concerned, whatever my limited experience, I can tell you, we need to differentiate between the, I remember very vividly when we started our careers, that time ISM used to be one of the important aspects, Interstate Migrant Labor Act and all. It was only on paper. Today, the most vulnerable group has been ISM, the Interstate Migrant Labor. It is, if you see in PSUs and all, most of the contract labor are secure. Their jobs don't go away. So what is needed to be done from the point of view of economy, or maybe wherever private sector is there, they need to take care of the migrant labor. Now, migrant labor, what is happening as a result of this movement of migrant labor from one place to another? What is happening is they are going into forced entrepreneurship, maybe at the individual level or maybe at the group level and all. So there has to be a fillip at the level of forced entrepreneurship. One more aspect which I would like to highlight here is, as I said, greater consciousness. Today, if you see in the energy sector, there is a sea change in energy sector. Energy sector today, you can't be, earlier also we were having, say, solar energy, wind energy and all. Today, if you see, there has to be a much greater shift on that side also. You have to use much more, what you call, natural resources. Without exploiting those resources, you need to go in for those resources, maybe at the micro level or at the macro level and all. You have to be, whatever you do, it has to be compatible with the environmental requirements. So there has to be greater consciousness on that front also. Lastly, I'll say that it is, HR has to play a role, there is no doubt. HR has to be, as I said earlier, has to be a very strong integral partner in the business. There was earlier, we were working in silos. HR in PSUs was working in silos. Basically, initially administration, then regulatory framework, then somewhere getting into business. Today, they need to understand business at each level. If, by the way, when a grade 2 or grade 3 joins, wherever, he needs to understand how a shop floor works, a process, how do they work. And later on only he'll be able to work out as to what type of, say, our machine turning is required, milling is required, how it can be done much more better, efficiently than what has been done hitherto. One more aspect I tell you. IR labor scenario, we need to be empathetic, but we are much more empathetic than required. The union, basically, if I see in the labor intensive sector, what happened is it's a pakka fact that they are not able to see the larger picture, which we from the management side are able to see. Maybe a very small segment of labor leadership is able to understand and appreciate the larger picture. Now there is a greater time than when the statute also gets amended to the extent that labor understands the inevitability of changes in the acts. There has to be a proactive change in the labor laws, particularly in certain areas, which I am sure this is the time when labor will understand, the management will understand. Those are things I thought I'll add. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. In fact, before we open the question answer box,
One more point, I think I would like to bring it here.
Sure, sir, please.
Joshi, can I?
Yeah, sure, sir. Please welcome.
My co-panelists have very rightly brought out some of the issues which are with reference to from the employee perspective. What are the aspirations of the employees from HR? What is important also for us as a fraternity is to see the perspective of the owners, the corporate world, the boards. What is their expectations from HR? I think that's a very important aspect, and how it has changed and what are the issues. There are two issues which I distinctly see from their perspective. Is one is that employee productivity. Now, how the entire these 2-3 months have impacted the employee productivity. I think none of us have taken any initiative so far that can we measure it, or should we measure it, or how it is impacted, how much it is, and what needs to be done to improve the productivity. First is measurement side, and second is how we can improve the productivity of the organization. And I think if we can address this, then I think we'll justify our role in a much better way. This is one. A second thing is another challenge which has thrown to the various managements, to the HR is that how we can remotely hire people. Now, how can we skill the people remotely? How can we train people, as one of our co-panelists said, training and skilling, and what kind of a way forward we have, what kind of solutions we have for this, and third is how can we engage employee better, because these are some of the issues. I think these two issues are pertinent. I think we can take it on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sam. Saptarishi ji, any points you would like to add?
No, I think there were very important observations which my co-panelists have subsequently mentioned. One about the employee productivity. And I can share my experiences in NTPC because the nature of the business is not possible that everything can be done work from home. Essentially, it is managing the operation and maintenance of the plant. So which essentially has to be carried on by on-site presence and being there in the plant area. But then there is a huge segment of the workforce which is to function in the offices, particularly contracts, materials, finance, HRs, a lot of other functions, and various other disciplines used to function from the offices. And we have observed that before pandemic itself, when this pandemic started, it was definitely put to much greater use. But before pandemic, we had undertaken a huge transformation of digital transformation in the organization, whereby the entire workflow was relegated to the digital platforms. And therefore, and we created a lot of shared services concepts in the organizations. And those were proven and tested during this COVID times, because now it is very easy for those who are working from home. And my understanding is about 30 to 35% of the entire workforce of NTPC today is working from home. And rest of the people are required to work from actually, on-site kind of presence. So it is possible to measure productivity of this set of people, because now it is possible that at what time a file is initiated, a file is closed with due approval, how much time it has been taken, what kind of value addition it has happened. Everything has been captured in a digital format. So I think going forward, we can analyze those data which is available as a part of this workflow outcomes. And definitely we can come out with some measurement of how productive or how efficient this entire workflow has been. So this is one small observation which I want to mention. And second thing, which definitely I would like to say, that it is interesting to note that while most of the industries during this lockdown has been severely affected due to absence of the migrant workers, but at the same time, there are certain industries who performed much better, and even their productivity during this lockdown period was much higher. So I think from HR perspective, it is important to analyze as to what these set of industries they have done, which has enabled them to continue their normal functioning even during this lockdown period. So that's why I was specifically emphasizing on going beyond the statutory obligations and try to see that what is required for the organizations to sustain its activities. That is what is more important. So maybe if it is possible, some kind of, a reasonable distance, housing may be created by the industries if it is possible or affordable for that industry to do that. Or if it is not possible for the unitary industry to take care of that, maybe a cluster of industries or society of industries or body of industries can come up with those kind of propositions where they take up this kind of basic needs like housing and things like that, so that in such eventuality and crisis, the migrant workers are not required to leave their workplace, leave their livelihood at, in serious jeopardy, and, head towards their hometown where there is no certainty of any kind of, employment or livelihood. So these are some of the observations. And last point, which I would certainly like to say that, we have seen that there has been a huge flight of these migrant workers who essentially have been performing highly skilled jobs in some of the western part of the country, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. I think these people were engaged in a highly skilled nature of the job. And post-lockdown and post this kind of crisis, many of them have left their workplaces and headed towards their hometown in Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, and West Bengal. So I think this, and while they have gone there, there is a very good initiative which has recently been taken up by the government as to do something for them at their place where they are presently situated. But my understanding is that if we can create some kind of entrepreneurship who can connect between the availability of this kind of skill sets, group them, try to identify them and find out applicable use where they can find in an industry and try to connect them and facilitate them. I think that is the kind of requirement which has to be, which is the need of the hour in dealing with this, skill shortage at a place where it is required the most. So these are some of my, observations. Of course, this requires much more deeper dive to, come up with some kind of working solutions. But I think it's high time that we need to think about these matters.
Thank you, sir. Any point to add? Yeah, please.
Two small points I tell you.
Yeah. Sure.
One is Mishraji has rightly brought out labor productivity. Labor productivity has been the most important aspect, I tell you, insofar as HR is concerned. Very, very important aspect, particularly in labor intensive organizations like in HAL and all. We had almost 20,000 workforce. Now, labor productivity, first is HR has to very clearly, which I think all of us take this as a cardinal rule, that whatever, everything has to be measured, whether it is HR function or finance function or whichever function, marketing, everything has to be measured. Now, in so far labor productivity, I'll give a very, very, very clear example. I retired on 31st December. We settled our wage agreement. I told very categorically right from the beginning, it cannot be wage agreement. It cannot be a bargaining on one side. It has to be a productivity agreement. There was hue and cry on that aspect, but I didn't budge as chairman of that committee. I said I will not agree, and very categorically brought out that, say example, I'll give a small example. All the PSUs were giving 15%, 35%. I said nothing doing. I'll show you what is the productivity. It has to be categorically productivity linked. Example, say incentive. If you take incentive in HAL and all, even for working of one SMH, amount was being given. Basic logic was that you can give incentive only after he puts in 8 days of work. I'm entitled to take work from a labor and officer, whoever, for 8 hours. Beyond that, or there are, say, for a particular task, there are, say, example, 6 hours. You have to do that job in 6 hours. You do in 4 hours, I agree for that 2 hours and all. You can, because space or your time gets, man-hour gets you get extra man-hours and all. We put it in these systems. We didn't agree. There was an indefinite strike in HAL. I was leading that entire group of management. We didn't budge. We said it has to productivity link. In spite of the fact there was a indefinite strike which got culminated essentially because we took some legal action, and then 9 days of strike got over. But we didn't budge, and it is absolutely, we didn't go beyond 12%, 24% on the opposite side, because that was the only thing we could sustain in the long run. What I'm essentially saying that this is the right time when we have to strike very hard. That productivity has to be the key word. How do you bring it out? Now there's a time that you can use all those tools. Empathy has to be definitely there as a part of the system, but at the same time, productivity has to be very carefully thought out. one more aspect which we have not very cogently brought out, CSR. CSR was all the policies. Today, if you see, the pandemic has shown us that it's basically an ego slap on the face of humanity. That if you do like this, the nature will react like this. So the CSR of PSUs has to be driven, has to be much more conscious. It has to be environmentally conscious. It was not so much so far. It has to definitely go miles. You put it in policy, so nobody will be able to mess with that. The CSR has to be accordingly aligned with the new reality. So this has to be definitely as a part of HR, because normally CSR is handled by HR along with the director, implement director and all. But HR plays a very key role. You need to put policies so that all these things are accordingly embedded in the systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. I think panel, now we can go straight to the question answer. So I'll start with the questions. Mr. Ponnu Swami Muruheshan has asked, many organizations using COVID-19 as the opportunity and try to exploit the workforce by way of reducing the salary and welfare measures. Is it correct on part of the management to do like this? Need your views on this. So who will react?
Basically, what Murugesan has brought out is that today, first of all, we have to take this aspect in consideration that revenues have come down. So what do the organizations do? Essentially, maybe Murugesan belongs to a private sector organization. Even PSUs also have taken recourse to these type of measures. There has to be a general understanding in the total organization, including a workforce, that if we have to sustain in the long run, if we have to come out of it successfully, we have to create a new normal. Then wage cut or maybe redeployment of labor, all these things will have to be there at least till such time we get over the pandemic. Wage cut for the time being, or allow them to do certain things not counter to the organization and all. I think we should allow maybe some of the workforce, they can do outside certain things and all, because certain avenues also have come out now. So I would like to say that yes, I don't think there's anything wrong in that. These are testing times. I think we need to find these type of measures to ensure that anyway, without hurting any stakeholder too hard that it impacts the business cardinally. That would be my answer.
Okay, Deepak Bharara, he has asked, what are leadership challenges of CHRO in an organization? Saptarishi ji, aap kuch keh rahe hain, please.
Joshi ji, can I interrupt you?
Please, sir. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to give another perspective to that question which was raised.
Yeah.
I think there is no universal answer of right or wrong, which is universally applicable for all the industries. It depends upon what is the affordability of what proportion of the wage bill is to their entire revenues, whether the organization is in a position to afford that or not. There are multiple questions. So there cannot be one single answer that yes, it is correct or it is not correct. Depends upon organization's ability to take care of that kind of aspect. Yeah. So that is all I just wanted to supplement that.
Okay, thank you. Can I move to the second question?
Please go ahead.
Mr. Deepak Bharara has asked, he wants to know what are leadership challenges for CHRO in an organization? Mr. Sir?
Yeah. So we have already talked about it that, ultimately, we have said that there are certain competencies which are very important for a CHRO, and especially in these times, as I said earlier, the sense of service, the compassion, the empathy, the call beyond duty. If we can just try to put ourselves in that frame, I think we have the answer for most of the things. So these are the basic things, we have to rise up.
Avinash, can I?
Yeah, sure, Vinay.
Leadership challenges, I personally feel that there are certainly leadership challenges for head of HR. First is, most important aspect is your sustainability on the long run. Mr. Saptarishi Rai also has added there cannot be a universal answer to all these things. So I think most of the organizations at this point in time, I think with a clear conviction, HR has to very categorically bring it out. If in the long term, the organization decides that at least they cannot sustain, the revenues have definitely come down. So even if it either it is a executive oriented or maybe labor oriented, executive oriented becomes slightly easy. But for the labor oriented organization like we say BHEL, HAL, maybe ONGC, I don't know whichever labor intensive organization or SAIL and all, their labor will definitely somewhere come into play if you what you call start changing. It will immediately that ID Act will come into play and all. So what is required is for HR is that flexi timings, then somewhere a salary, at least you have to withhold salary for the time being. In fact, this situation came in HL. We said that we are not able to pay for a different reason. So we decided we will not, contingency advances were there. We stopped the contingency advances. In fact, we came to the extent that at one point in time that we will not be able to pay the full increment also. So somewhere if exigencies are there in certain organizations, you are not able to sustain in the long run, the revenue generation and all. I think a call has to be taken by, particularly it has to be front-ended by HR only. When the organization takes a call that revenue has taken a hit, when the basic salaries also have to be, normally what happens is, we'll try to first of all balance it out with certain other revenue expenditures and all. We'll try to bring down the overhead expenditures and all, which has already come down, particularly if you see travel expenses has come down quite drastically because of pandemic and all. We'll try to set it off to an extent possible. But if it becomes absolutely inevitable, I'm sure it becomes absolutely important for HR person to step forward and say, these are the challenges, these are the changes which you want to bring. And I'm sure most of the elected organization, elected management and the unions also will see reason behind it. So this is an important challenge. I think how do we enforce labor deployment, defer the wages, cut the wages to an extent. And then second thing is the way the working are very important. As I said in one of my earlier discussions, that you have to now, you can't be engaging workforce on a permanent basis as we have been doing. So there has to be some sort of a, say now HR only will have to do that. I remember when we went in for this tenure based, there was a hue and cry. The issue went up to the highest parliament and all. But we stood our ground because we knew that organization cannot sustain. So somewhere now there's a time that we need to use, HR only has to somewhere along with the relevant department, relevant functions, use maximum AI, use maximum IoT, use machine learning. All those aspects will have to be brought out. HR will have a very important role in that. At least I being a part of the board and a member of quite a few committees and all, I was definitely quite sure that all of us, most of us have that clarity, conviction and the commitment to move ahead. So that will be my take on that.
Okay. Som Shankar Mitra has asked, as HR, how the KRAs will be set up for the employees during the COVID times, and also how the performance will be measured and on what basis will be measured, as most of the workforce is operating from work from home module.
No.
My take on this particular question is that this is a transition phase and the situation is yet to be stabilized. So all those challenges of measurement, whether it is a CBSE exam or IIT joint entrance examination, for all other things, wherever you have to have some kind of measurement of the performance, I think that will obviously be a challenge, and people will try to adopt different ways to find it out. Some will try to correlate with this past performance for this period, which obviously the person's performance was greatly impaired and impacted by the pandemic. But I think the larger issue is that what after post COVID, what kind of changes or what kind of need to be incorporated into our system, which is a matter of larger concern. I think that is what my take on this particular aspect. And I would just simply add, to the question of Mr. Deepak Bharara's question about the leadership challenges on the HR front. I think that, to my mind, there are three broad areas which had to be addressed. One is the work, second is the workplace, and the third is the workforce. Now, if I look into the work, what all that we are doing in an organizations will perhaps not be the same post-COVID. So there is a lot of things which will undergo a change. So under that kind of change environment of the work, like the work, the way it is being carried out, maybe some of the things will continue to be the same way, but lot other things may undergo a change. So that is one area that HR has to deal with, that what kind of changes are anticipated and accordingly, facilitate that. The second thing is in terms of the workplace. So post-COVID, there will be a lot of redesigning of the workspaces and, a lot of safety and other measures. And, from health point of view and hygiene point of view will have to be actually incorporated in terms of dealing that. And third thing, which is very important, is the workforce. So if I talk about the workforce, I think it is what kind of skill sets would be required in times to come, where we might see a great invasion of the technology and digital. What Mr. Chamola has mentioned, that there will be a larger play of technology, whether it is AI, machine learning, artificial intelligence, or or augmented reality, or all sorts of the IoT and all other things. I think that has to be factored in consultation with the technology partners in the organization, and come up with the modules which will be required to be imparted as a part of skill upgradation program for the workforces to upgrade their skills. Because in absence of that, it will be very difficult to go ahead with the existing set of skills in meeting the requirement of the future of this thing. Because the whole thing has been accelerated post-pandemic. The thing which had been kept in the waiting, I think due to this pandemic, all those processes of going towards using technology for enhancing the productivity, those has got a lot of impetus.
Can I add one point in this?
Sure, Mr. Sir.
You see, the question today is that how can KRA change? You see, if I'm supposed to I have been given certain job role in the organization, I have certain targets to fulfill. Now the challenge for me as an individual is to perform, to deliver within the given limitations. Now, to what extent we as HR fraternity can facilitate the employee to deliver. That is by use, as some of my panelists have said, use of technology, data analytics, artificial intelligence, and also to provide them the wherewithals. We need to rise up to provide wherewithals to the employee to able to optimally perform within the given situation. Now he is at home or she is at home. So can we facilitate him? Can we help him to deliver to his potential? That's the challenge. And then we'll have to rise up, either by use of technology or use by reaching out to people on a daily basis. As a group leader, maybe I have to interact with my team on a daily basis. So that's, I think, is a challenge, and I'm sure that many of the team have been able to deliver. And if, as some of my panelists have said, that some of the companies have been able to maintain the productivity. So it's only because that some people have risen to the occasion and have been able to.
Very right, sir. KRAs can't be changed.
Small point. Small point, I'll tell you. One aspect which is very important, which is evident even in your this particular forum which you have created. You see, training and development also is a part of HR. Most of the organizations, I think we take NTPC or take in HAL and all. Training and development throughout the company was always headed by HR only. I was heading that governing council almost for 8 years ago. One aspect which is very important, particularly from the COVID point of view, is that now executive coaching or maybe workmen also, whatever, you need to have more of what we call coaching on online basis now. It has to become a normal now. A lot of accreditation certification courses are available now, if you see. So lot of such courses can be done online without what you call movement of individuals from one place to another. Earlier what was happening, anyway, it has its own advantages. All the seniors, all the what you call officers or employees coming at one place and all. It has, but today because of the difficulties posed by pandemic and all, we need to find a judicious blend between what you call coming together and using this particular Skype or online systems to provide maximum coaching through this platform. I think most of the organizations must have already started this. I'm sure this is one particular role which HR head has to play in the organization.
Thank you, Vinay. Pranav Verma has asked, what is your opinion with respect to management of dissatisfaction, fear of employees in an industry where larger portion of the job through remote is not possible. The fear and dissatisfaction.
Now, just come again.
What is your opinion with respect to management of dissatisfaction and fear of employees in an industry where larger portion of the job through remote is not possible? You have to be available on site. You have to go to the site for production. Maybe it's from a manufacturing industry. The question is.
I think
So management of fear.
Roy had very clearly brought out that wherever it is not possible, a man has to be available on the machine and all. In that case, there has to be redesigning of your workplace. So dissatisfaction will come only if you are not able to redesign those things and all. There is a change which will definitely cause some reaction, but I think workforce will also understand that this is something which is inevitable, which is incumbent upon each organization to now work out its own strategy and operational aspects to ensure that they factor in this particular reality and move ahead. So dissatisfaction in any case used to be there earlier. Now it has a different dimension. I'm sure most of the organization, HR heads and the leadership, I think will be able to handle that. Work redesign is the important aspect. It will definitely throw its own issues. Working from home, as NTPC and Director HR of NTPC had brought out, that working from home earlier we had a lot of doubts about it, the efficacy of this system of working from home. But today, an organization like NTPC has already proved that yes, it is in quite a function, it is possible. So I think this will also become a part of the new normal. I'm sure whatever dissatisfaction it throws, it will be taken care.
Okay.
Another dimension I would add
some more points here.
The question of Mr. Pranav Verma is respect to the dissatisfaction about the people, those who are actually not able to perform the job from remote or work from home. Now, if you look into this dissatisfaction aspect, it is generally emanating from the fact that something which is possible but is not being done, and therefore it is giving rise to a lot of dissatisfaction for that unfulfilled or the gap which is existing between what is possible and what is the present state. Now, if an organization proactively takes all possible measures to ensure safety, well-being, health, both emotional as well as physical of the employee, even though he is necessarily required to perform work on site at the site, and his job cannot be performed from home or from any other remote area, I think that itself should reassure the employee that organization is committed to the well-being of the employees, and therefore the gap or whatever is the expected dissatisfaction, I think there is no scope for, or there is no room for that. Say, for example, if all the personal protective equipments are provided, if you are provided with all those necessary, facilitation of maintaining a distances or, masks and other precautionary measures which are generally mandated during this kind of crisis period. So there is nothing else that as an employer or a management can do over and above what is possible to be done in those kind of situations. And I think explaining that larger objective, that why his presence is required at the workforce which cannot be performed from the home, and for doing that all facilitation, if it is provided, I think there should not be any room or scope for any dissatisfaction.
Okay, sir.
I just want to add one point, Dr. Joshi.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, you see, if you look at wherever somebody has raised the point regarding where the on-site is inevitable, you have to go to your production line. Now, let's see that how the industry has performed, the corporate world has performed during this pandemic. And it's a great revelation that FMCG has gained. Actually, if you look at it, they have been able to maintain production, maintain supplies. So how they have done it? There you have to go to the production line to really produce the FMCG products. So if they can do it, as one of my panelists said, that the better PPE, better transportation, better trying to contact people and bring them to the site. So it has been possible, and the teams have done it. India has done it. Our people have done it. So if the one sector can do it, I'm sure that as a fraternity, we'll try to understand that how could they do it and try to replicate it elsewhere.
Okay, sir. There's one question from again Pranav Verma. your opinion about managing the challenges of migrant labor are posing to industries where there is no new opportunity, as most of the units are stabilized and majority of gig workers are from local area and no new opportunities are available. So it's about managing the challenges of migrant labor.
I think, migrant labor, I mean, this is something, which the first time it has happened that, and if you look at what has actually happened is that most of the metros where the production lines and the service sector was able to serve people is out of the people who are coming not from the that town. They were migrant labor, and they are fairly skilled. So you will, I think, I feel that their skills are available. So whether their skills will be used at the same place where the metros were or where the opportunities were or elsewhere. So skills never go waste. They'll be used wherever they are. And many states have taken initiative, like states like Punjab, where they airlifted people from various locations and try to bring them to their work centers, maybe at a higher cost. But the skills will never be going a begging. They'll be always available and maybe at a premium.
Mr. Anil Mehta has asked, most of the organizations have started curtailing incentives and benefits in the name of cost-cutting measures. Now in this background, how to keep the employee motivation, morale and productivity high? Yeah. So this is happening in most of the industries today, especially manufacturing.
As Mr. Chamola and Mr. has already said so, actually, the first is whether the business will survive or not.
Yeah.
Our survival as an employee depends on the industry that we are working in. First is the interest of the company. Now, maybe see, even the highest office in the country has taken a self-cut of 30%.
Yeah.
30% self. Yeah. And many of I think it's better that we start realizing the fact that till the time many companies have allowed their employees to go on 50% of the wages, or maybe work for 15 days, work for a week. So first is whether we survive as a company, whether we survive. So first is the survival of the company where we work for, the sector where we work for, even if it is, I would say 50% or 40%. Survival is first important.
Survival is first.
We will have to accept this fact that many of us we have to accept this.
Okay, right. A question to Mr. Chamola from Victor Krishnaswamy. How the new challenge of work without migrant workmen for some time or permanently, which will affect the entire operations, the skills, talents acquired across the globe, will it be restricted for the next few months, years?
I would like to address it in this way. That first of all, this is basically, I'm sure all of us are seeing what is trending insofar as migrant labor is concerned. Migrant labor, essentially, the issue arose because they felt that this is going to be a very prolonged, affair. And the basic issue of survival of the labor and the families became a major issue. Now, I'm sure you must have also observed that certain critical most of the migrant labor are brought by the contractors from one place to another for a particular job. And this is happening mostly in the unorganized sector. Organized sector, I'm sure now there'll be a very clear focus on what are the basically safeguards for moving labor, migrant labor from one place to another. What are essentially required? It is already there in the Act. I think the Act has to be now slightly seen. Has to be seen with a clear focus as to what are the facilities that are required to be ensured. Number one. Second thing, it has to be somewhere inbuilt in the contract itself. Now, second aspect is, I'm sure this is not this situation which is going to remain forever. Economy in a different manner will definitely come to its own new normal. At that point in time, the critical skills required of the migrant labor will definitely move to those areas where it is required. Say example, a particular person requires some type of welding, which is not available in some part of, and he is working in Bihar. It is required in certain areas where, for example, different type of TIG welding is required, or friction welding is required, or different type of sheet metal forming is required and all. Those things, the skill will definitely move from that place to where it is required. It is only a temporary phenomena, and I'm sure the economy will definitely find a way to balance it, particularly over a period of time.
There is a question from Sushant Vats, I think former ONGCN. Don't you think that HR missed the opportunity of achieving higher labor productivity by not ensuring that they are comfortable and safe at the present place of work rather than moving to their home state? Do you think it is an appropriate approach to have employees only on contract or a combination of regular and contract employees, and how these will affect the feeling of belongingness and thereby EQ of employees? So, Mr. Sushant first.
I would like to, I don't know if migrant labor issue has maybe there in other organizations and all. It was not there in the organization where I worked and all. But I feel that this issue was more in the unorganized sector, like people working in, say, example, hotels, entertainment industry, malls. The restaurant, hotel business has taken a big hit. Cinemas has taken a big hit. Lot of restaurant business has taken a big hit. So those organizations which have taken a big hit, the people have moved because they knew that it is not going to open. For that particular type of labor, I don't think what you call HR could have played any role. In the organized sector is concerned, I don't think that much. I don't think data is available for the country as well as to how many have moved from. It is not to my knowledge. Maybe my naivety on that aspect. But my feeling is that my understanding of the issue is that most of it has happened. At least 98% has happened from the unorganized sector, where people used to work in areas which have been impacted maximum. So I don't think HR could have played a key role in so far as that is concerned. HR, I'm sure, from the operational aspects in PSUs, have risen to the occasion to ensure that whatever was required of them, be it from the social distancing, be it from the point of view of their workplace, their transportation, all those things, I'm sure most of the organizations have taken care. Migrant labor was not an issue, it's a very, very, even governments were taken aware. Present government was taken unawares of this aspect. That's so much of movement. Nobody had that type of data. Even government didn't have a data. So the issue of HR, playing a part in that, I think would be a misplaced perception.
Interesting question from Ricky Mishra. Companies are asking for work from home, but they are pressurizing by assigning lots of work. Please focus on it. Do we need to have guidelines regarding work from home?
Oh, that's I think is a very interesting question.
Yeah.
I think most of the Indians are facing it. Well, not only Indians, globally people are facing it. The children, if you look at
no timings.
The children are facing it because they have to start working from. They don't know what exactly has happened. Actually, most of them are taken aback by this shock. Yeah. But the fact is that again, I come back to the role as an organization, as a HR fraternity. Are we reaching out to people and equipping them to to deliver? Maybe so many of the people, I myself, I feel that many times I don't know how to operate this your Zoom or maybe Hangout, and so many of the organizations have come forward. They are teaching their people. They are saying that this is how you need to do. This is how you need to optimize your performance. And so the role of the organization is very important. Communication, I think, is one of the biggest challenges which has been thrown up, and many have taken the challenge. Many organizations, HR fraternity has taken the challenge to bring about the two-way communications on a daily basis, 24/7. Now, like a circular you have been issuing in the office. I mean, does it reach people, or whatever people are saying? Does it reach the company? So communication, I mean, to and fro, is a challenge. And this can happen only by be more proactive. So many organizations have taken initiative to educate employees how to optimize.
I think that is one of the training and learning initiative which should be there. All HR fraternity to educate the people how to operate.
Yes.
Bhupendra Singh is asking, is HR job at risk because organization to reduce their expenses and HR and layoffs and all these in the current scenario? So probably he's from a private sector. This kind of a question, Bhupendra Singh. The security about the HR job.
Is he asking about security of the HR job?
Yeah, he's asking, is HR job at risk because our organization to reduce their expenses and sending HR to layoffs?
The one aspect which I always feel is we have not discussed so far about the transactional aspect of HR. In so far, I think most of the organizations have already, be it ONGC, NTPC, HAL, BHL, SAIL, you take most of the transactions had already been, I think, either outsourced or being done by third party. So that particular aspect, I think, one more aspect in the background of that, I'll tell you, HR, always they feel that HR is a function which can always be outsourced. The thinking has, there are certain critical roles which HR has to play, which will continue to play. You can't outsource the entire HR function. So there are critical, HR is the only, say, if certain things are required to be done, temping is required to be done, example. Or a workforce has to be somewhere redeployed. Who has to do it? Basically HR only. So HR job, I will not say that, but if the acts has to fall on certain functions, HR also is a part of the organization, subset of the organization. Acts will fall on HR also if certain things are being done. Maybe voluntary, for example, tomorrow an organization is forced to rationalize manpower and go resort to, say, example, VRS and all. So equally, what you call HR will also will get impacted as other functions. But HR will be the organization which will get impacted maximum. I don't think that is the issue. I think that will not be the right way of looking at it.
See, if you look at Fortune 500 company CEOs, one of the data I would like to share with all of you is that they are saying is by January 21, the Fortune 500 companies CEOs, they are saying by globally about 26 million jobs will be lost. If the 26 million jobs will be lost in Fortune 500 companies by another 6 months' time, so HR, how can HR remain unaffected? So we'll have to add value, and people should say that, look, this is the fraternity which is adding value to the company. So this actually is a golden opportunity for us to rise, to reach out to people, to serve people, and make a niche for yourself.
Very right. Question from Trupti Modi about the women's issue. It has been a challenge to work from home for women during the COVID. How can HR address this problem as COVID is going to stay for longer time?
I think experience has been more on the Saptarshi Rai side. He can answer this question better.
So thank you. I think the challenge is all that challenge of working from home gets further, I would say, aggravated when it comes to the women employees, because there are some household chores that they have to actually also attend to. At the same time, they need to work from home. So I think here is some of the ways that we can actually deal with this kind of situation is one, from the policy point of view, as to what kind of facilitation that we can do as an organization so as to help enable our women employees to work more effectively from home and yet take care of their other responsibilities in the family. So that is one area. And this has to be company specific. This has to be business specific. There cannot be one size fits all approach to this particular issue, to my mind. Second thing, which is very important from the other, is what Mr. Mishra has just mentioned, and which is not exclusively to the women employees, but it is applicable universally to all the workforce. And that is, when we talk about facilitation from working from home, one part is that they need to be adequately trained. They need to be given adequate input in terms of their training. Second thing is that since work from home requires certain essential resources, say for example, you need to have broadband connection or internet access. You need to sit in front of your device for a longer period. So that experience normally in houses, many of the houses are not equipped with those kind of ergonomically designed sitting arrangements and workspaces. So I think organization can facilitate, and I have examples of those organizations, though they may be very far and few in number, who have allowed their employees and arranged those workstations and chairs and things like that, which were there in the work offices, to be taken to their home, so that their employees can work more comfortably working from home. So I think different organizations are trying to work out and the ways which suits best for their organization. And I think that is how the companies will respond to this.
Yeah, Joshi ji, I used to tell one question, if you allow
sir,
me.
please,
Yeah,
sir.
As
Please,
a
welcome.
very wonderful
मैं सोच
session.
रहा था आपकी तरफ से नहीं आया क्वेश्चन, बाकी है अभी.
Very wonderful session, and we enjoyed everybody that HR roles and COVID and others. I am facing one challenge, sir. My challenge is that we are manufacturing unit. We are one of the largest manufacturing unit, where we have a machine shop, shop floor, boiler, furnace, and many other things, conveyor, all these things. So for social distancing, many people came to my visit at a factory and told me, make a social distancing. Then if you make the social distancing, I have to change the factory layout. So it's a crores of rupees. How can I change the factory layout? Because it's one of the largest factory. So it is shut down the factory more than 2 years or 1.5 years to shut down the factory to maintain the social distancing. Number one. Number two, there is my organization is a manufacturing unit, is a shop floor. So I cannot allow my people to stay home and work in the manufacturing unit, because they have to feed the conveyor, they have to feed the machine shop, they have to feed the boilers, they have to feed the melting or furnace. So how can a person work from the home and feed the materials to the conveyor? So 2-3 things I am facing, that I cannot change the factory layout for maintain the social distancing. I cannot tell my employee to work home. Then they cannot make the feed the product in the conveyor or boiler or furnace, etc. So all details as a business head, I said many times my HR guy, how can solve this problem? How can they ask me, sir, how can allow my people to work in the house? So my question is that how to solve this after COVID, post-COVID, how to solve this thing? Can you, sir, tell me that what will be the answer of my CEO, my boss?
Yeah, I'll be able to answer your question. You see, Mr. Ray, I mean, if you really look at, you must have all seen how the air hostesses look like now in the aircraft. They look like, you can't see them. Actually, they're all covered by PPEs. And this is the closest that you can reach out and be safe, keep your passengers safe, and yet work and deliver. So similarly, if you can, I'm sure that if you use PPE and cover people properly and protect them properly, I think you will be able to deliver in the production line. And as I told you, FMCGs have done it. They have produced. They maintained their production levels during this time only by doing this.
The cost, who will be bear the PPE cost?
So you raise the
additional cost. So who will bear the additional cost?
So that now you see today, you see that you go to the bus, the prices have gone up by about 60-70% in the bus by social distancing. So people are paying it now. So similarly, people will pay.
And just add, Reza will just say,
yeah.
In so far as there are certain, you brought out certain aspects. I am also from basically the same. Maybe it was a larger organization. Like I worked for 5 years in BEML also as a chief general manager, and moved to director HR in HAL. I have also seen huge machine shops and all. I don't know whether your machines are NC machines or not NC machines and all. Everything, first of all, will have an initial cost. There is no doubt. You will have to, first of all, envisage some sort of a cost. Number one. You cannot, in so machine is concerned, turning, milling, all those things concerned, you can't move. You will have to get it done from the concerned areas only. As Mishra ji rightly brought out that there will be some cost, but for the time being, immediate solution is your PPE kits. But what I feel is you need to go in for a strategy wise, long term wise. You need to go in for a certain change. All those NC machines can be combined. One operator. Are we talking about NC machines only?
Yeah, yes, sir.
NC machines, I tell you, long back, almost 15 years back, we had through one contract labor, 5 machines we were able to control, and one DBM person was there. He was able to handle all 5 machines after programming and all. All 5 machines were handled by single person in Italy. You'll be surprised. It was done. It has become a norm now in most of the organizations. So it has to be, you have to bring in technology, I'm telling you. Without technology, you can't find a lasting solution for this issue. and it is absolutely possible. If you are saying not possible, I'm sure we are fooling ourselves.
Yeah.
We have done. All the 5 machines can be controlled through one particular person only. If you need to just do, you don't have to, you can't, I agree that you can't change the layout. It is not possible. In the short run, you can't do it. The long term, you will have to, whenever you have a new machine, you can put it appropriately. One machine on the one side, one facing each other, one person can do 2 machines, 4 machines can be operated by a single person. I'm sure that is the solution. But each organization has got its own peculiarities. We can't comment general basis on only, but I'm sure there's a technology solution for this also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I hope we are coming to the end.
Yeah.
And thank you all the panelists for very, very absorbing, interactive and informative session. And we are getting some very, very good thanks and responses for this session. I am indeed thankful to you. And now my person who is behind the show, Gurvinder Singh, has been operating, and he has been given the task of giving a vote of thanks. So I invite now Gurvinder to say
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Gurvinder.
Sir, it was indeed a very wonderful and insightful session where we all learned about the rich experiences of all the 3 speakers, Shri Desh Deepak Mishra ji, Shri VM Chamola ji, and Shri Saptarshi Roy ji. I, on behalf of ICT National Office and the entire team, thank you all the speakers and the participants for their interaction and valuable time. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you and goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Welcome, sir. ISTD for all are we are requested to come and join together for ISTD for L&D for future development of ISTD and the society.
Okay, sir.